Seems like every time you turn on the news, you get to hear people debating words like deficit spending, saving, spending, inflation, what does it all mean, socialism, capitalism. So I thought I'd explain what I call godonomics. I'm Chad Hovind. We spent some time over the last few years really studying what does God have to say about economy. What does it have to say about a personal economy, a family economy, and even a national economy? But of course, we don't want to take ourselves too seriously, so I have a turkey here. Because in this session, we're going to talk about what did God say to Adam Smith. But before we talk about Adam Smith, I need to go back to the first Thanksgiving. At that first Thanksgiving, William Bradford, who would eventually become the governor, took some pilgrims over to experience freedom, a new land, a new opportunity. And on his way over, there was a charter by the group that sent him, and that charter said that they had to conduct this new society in a certain way, a socialistic way. Everybody was to work for the common good. Take the money, take their goods, and pour them into one central pot, and then from that pot, everybody's needs would be taken care of. Or so they said. See, it always sounds nice until you try and do it, and that's exactly what William Bradford found. That first year was tragic. In that first year, what happened was William Bradford lost his wife, and many others died of disease. But more tragic was that many died from poverty. That first year, when everyone was supposed to be working for the common good, a lot of people were tired, getting up a little late. Some people, I just don't feel like going to work. Well, I'll have somebody else take care of it. At the end of the year, half the pilgrims had died. And yes, the pilgrims did not have big buckles on their heads. We're talking about real people who are really trying to make a brand new life. So William Bradford called them together. Okay, guys, all right, we really got to work hard. Half of our people died. We got to really work hard for the common good. So do better. Okay. Well, sure enough, the next year, same thing happened. People were lazy. People were too tired. People thought, well, somebody else will take care of me. At the end of the year, another poverty, starvation. The whole pilgrim experiment was falling apart. And William Bradford said, we got to go back to the Scripture. What are God's principles to this circumstance? And he went back and studied the Scriptures, and he found himself actually in the Old Testament. And he noticed that God talked about, when he brought his people into freedom, property. Remember the Ten Commandments? You shall not steal or envy your neighbor's horse, your neighbor's donkey, your neighbor's house. He said, well, this is different. This isn't a common pool. This is the idea that each person owns their own thing, works their own thing. You shouldn't steal or envy somebody else's thing. It was property rights. He said, why don't we try God's wisdom applied to this? He called everybody together and says, this has failed. Let's try something new. Everybody gets a plot of land. This family's a plot of land. This family's a plot of land. Here's your job. You work your plot of land. You provide for yourself. And you have the incentive to get the work done. And if you don't get the work done, you're going to starve. Well, all of a sudden, something amazing happened. People who were sick, whoa, they're out there in the field. Husbands, wives, kids, they were together working their farm. They were together planting the seeds, seeing the work of their labor. And you know what happened at the end of that year? At the end of that year, William Bradford called everyone together and said, we have such bounty, we have such incredible prosperity, that's why he celebrated with the first Thanksgiving. To celebrate the incredible prosperity that occurred when property rights, incentive, and freedom were put into motion. He wrote in his journal that he wanted those of us who came after him to learn from their mistakes. He said, rather than on Thanksgiving eating a turkey, you might be a turkey if you don't follow our example. And yet here we are, hundreds of years later, still experimenting with socialism. And yet time and time and time again it's failed. The problem, I think, is that capitalism has a bad name because it becomes whatever you define it to be. So let me tell you what capitalism really means. It's about three things. Property rights. That's the foundation of capitalism. Number two, freedom. Free workforce. You have the freedom to choose to work or not work for somebody, to choose what labor you will or what payroll you will or will not work for. And number three is incentive. Because I can choose to work for you, there's incentive. I'm going to get this blessing out of it. I'm going to get this crop out of it. There's an incentive. That's what capitalism is. Freedom, incentive, and property rights.